What's going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about Healthier Choices Management. HCMC just dropped their Q2 earnings, so I want to go over some of the highlights and things that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So they did drop it on Tuesday at 8:30 in the morning, and so essentially it wasn't all that bad. I know a lot of my previous videos have been kind of hating on HCMC for various things, or I guess lack of doing things in some fashion associated to the whole spinoff, but they actually did okay. So basically they have about 3.3 million in cash and cash equivalents. That is absolutely key. Of course, there's a caveat to that. Technically, just based on just basic math, that's how much they have in their books. And then they're burning through quite a lot, roughly about 2.4 million from operations. So logically, like I've alluded to in previous videos, this quarter is when they will need to dilute. And so this is where it gets into a sticky scenario of when the whole spinoff is going to happen. If they don't do it sooner rather than later, then that does mean that they will need to do a reverse stock split and dilute, because right now the outstanding shares is right here, so 479 billion. The authorized is up to 750 billion, but given where it is price point wise, they would need to do reverse stock split and then dilute. But gotta give them that they only did dilute $50,000 essentially. So they diluted about 1 billion shares. So it did go from their last earnings, which was right here, about 478 billion to where it is now, so the 479. So nothing that was kind of surprising. I was anticipating for them to really excessively dilute this quarter. Obviously this upcoming quarter that we're currently in Q3, this is when it will really happen. But you know what, looking at a lot of their growth, they did fairly well given the circumstances. Keep in mind, a lot of consumers in the States are struggling. I know maybe you guys might not be, but generally the consensus is that consumer buying power has been diminished significantly, and I think that's more and more apparent based on a lot of the data that's been coming out. So the fact that they did increase their net sales from comparing 2023 to 2024 in Q2 by 15%, that's, you know what, like I said, I've hated on them quite a lot in the past, but that is fairly good. And their gross profit was around 16%. So yes, even though they are burning through quite a lot, and based on the whole 4-point original plan from 2022, they did say that this whole spinoff is destined to be profitable. So I don't see that being feasible whatsoever. But based on, again, a lot of the S1s that's been coming out associated to HCWC, I think they kind of dropped that optimism. But once again, I think a lot of the assets that is being rolled over into HCWC, it's at least moving in the right direction. And in this actual document as well, they do allude to over the next quarter really monitoring a lot of stores, and if they're not performing, they're going to start closing. So I think HCMC is actually doing something right, and they're trying to forecast the future and mitigate risk by closing stores. So I see that as very, very optimistic, and maybe that's part of their plan to cut unnecessary expenses, and maybe that's their path to eventually profitability. But again, I just wanted to give them props based on this and the fact that they haven't excessively diluted. So when it comes down to it though, throughout this document, spinoff is kind of mentioned here. Let me just pull it up. So spinoff is mentioned 23 times, largely, as you can kind of even see what it popped up as, associated to the whole preferred stock. So this has been kind of my pet peeve. They've already started to essentially dilute under HCWC through the preferred stock. Just they're kind of promising through the conversion HCWC stock. So the spinoff hasn't even happened yet, and they're already starting to dilute. I'm not a big fan of this by like nothing, but spoiler alert, they actually don't have the record date yet for this spinoff. So most likely, like I've kind of alluded to, a lot of their S1 documents does say 2024 at the end of it, just doesn't have the date, exact date. So most likely it is going to occur in Q4. And again, if not, this is where it's very sticky for HCMC, because that means they'll have to do a whole reverse stock split. And like I said, just really rely on toxic debt, which seems to be where they're trying to orient themselves towards, regrettably. But still, you know what, like I said, as long as they're cutting and trimming the fat from the actual company and continue this good growth, which based on the last several quarters, they actually have been doing fairly well, even looking at this. So this is from their Q1. So they did have about 3.9 million in cash and cash equivalents at that stage. And even scrolling down, so comparing Q1 2024 to 2023, still fairly good growth. So again, I think that they are moving in the right direction, and they just need to keep up the good momentum. So you know what, even though HCMC, the management largely dumped all of their stock, and you can kind of see that through a lot of these. Actually, I'll pull up this. A lot of these 144s, Form 4s, this is all management right here. Still selling. So yeah, they've done a lot of selling, so essentially just jumping ship. So even though HCMC, the management probably doesn't really care whatsoever, and based on their past, I've already done a video, I think it's kind of sketchy, they're at least moving in the right direction. So once again, I just wanted to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly from their Q2 earnings. And so yeah, anticipate kind of reduced expenses probably this quarter, but again, if they don't announce the actual spin-off by, I'd say most likely, let's say October at the very latest, then this is where HCMC will need to do a reverse stock split. So nonetheless, let me know your thoughts on HCMC. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with HCMC? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with all that, appreciate all of you watching.